Lucky to work for a great group of people you really believe in?
Find yourself making an impact?
Technology is a river that flows through every aspect of an organization, and today is different. We put ourselves and our organizations literally at risk of complete destruction every single time we get online. One click, one distraction is all it takes. Hi, Cyber Crime Junkies. This is your host, David Morrow, along with co-host Mark Mosher.
Come join us as we explore our research into these blockbuster true crime stories,
along with interviews of leaders who built and protect great brands. Hey, good morning, and welcome to Cyber Crime Junkies. I am your host, David Morrow. In the studio today, we are very fortunate to be joined first by my illustrious co-host, Mark
I was
Mosher.
wondering if you were going to recognize it. I was on the screen too.
I'm
in the studio as well. Good morning, gentlemen.
You are up and early. That's great. You are my illustrious, fantabulous co-host, which is the words I got from my insincere things to say to coworkers app. That's a really
Always
good
effective.
app that I use.
Always effective.
It is fantastic. We are joined today by Travis DeForge and Christian Scott. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you guys for having us. We appreciate it.
Great. I am really excited. We are aware of your work both professionally and in your passions, your projects to help the security community. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about tips for people to get into cybersecurity. We're going to talk about what we see, and then we'll open it up for discussion. We get to do this live, which is always fun because you never know what questions will pop up. So we're always excited about that. So let's start with let me pick one of you. Let's talk with Christian. Kind of tell me kind of where you're from and how you kind of got into security, and then I want to ask you how you met Travis, etc.
Yeah, fantastic. So first and foremost, again, thank you guys so much for having us on. Really appreciate it. That all being noted, in regards to our background, Travis and myself currently work at GoVanguard Security / Gotham Security. I'm our Chief Operating Officer and Chief Information Security Officer. Travis will introduce a little bit about himself and his role in a moment. In regards to just kind of our side projects and what we've been doing for the cybersecurity community and helping people break into cybersecurity, we've had two main initiatives and projects that we've been investing a lot of time and resource into. One is Cyber-Judo, where Travis and myself do weekly Wednesday night training sessions with folks. It's very candid and off the cuff, and a mix between a little bit of an instructional versus kind of podcast type of feel, and then opening up to discussions with people in real time so that they can kind of pick our brain, right? And then the other initiative that we have for helping people break into cybersecurity and also build their leadership skills is Enclave-Regenerous, which myself and my partner Blake Shalem works with me on, and creating that type of content, and which it's got a little kind of like codified into like a wiki and knowledge base. It's really easy for people to find and to navigate through and search through various like databases, guides, tips, tricks, all that
really
kind of stuff.
Cool. For those that haven't checked this stuff out, and we'll get into this in just a second, but tell me who Blake is, the person that you joined. I know who Blake is through LinkedIn, but how do you guys know each other, and what gave you the impetus to come up with Enclave-Regenerous? Because it's really cool. It's really interesting.
That's a fantastic question, because it continues with the lead-in, right, of like the introduction of myself and like getting started in cybersecurity. Because when initially I got started in cybersecurity-ish, right, it was very much from like a technology-heavy background, right? When I was really young, doing like software development. When I was about 14 years old, I got into programming, and then I thought to myself, hey, you know what I'd hate doing for a career? I would hate. By the way, can I swear here? Is it all right for me to swear?
Of course, we'll let Apple know before it's released as a podcast later. Don't worry.
I always used to say to people when I was really young, I was like, hey, I want to be an awesome software developer. And I would hate doing anything like fucking networking. And then come to find out my first job was in network administration.
You got to start where you got to start, man.
Exactly. Right. And so for many, many years, I was on the blue team side of doing a lot of building data centers, architecture work, and all that kind of stuff. And I worked for an IT managed services firm at the time. And believe it or not, Blake, who started Gotham Security, came to us one day and was like, "Hey, you guys do any pen testing?" I was like, "Sure, I'll try it out. I'll give it a shot, right? Let's just, build the plane as we fly it here." And got into it. So she was the one who actually initially got me into cybersecurity and her background in business development and marketing. And then as we kind of like dug into it, I was just really enthusiastic, engaged with it and soaking it all up. And I really loved the red team side of things. And so as time continued forward, we essentially merged forces between our current firm, GoVanguard, and Gotham Security. And so Blake and myself essentially collaborate on a day-to-day basis of, project management, customer relationship management, team and culture building, and all that kind of stuff. And when it came to Enclave, Blake and myself really said, like, hey, for other people who are aspiring to be like young cybersecurity leaders, what type of resources and guidance can we provide them? And it's a little bit of a different format from the Cyber-Judo stuff, because it's hey, let's codify this into a set of guides here, not necessarily hey, AMA format, pick my brain here, like Cyber-Judo. And so Travis and myself on the Cyber-Judo side, we had it where, I've been mentoring people in my free time for a long time now, for probably about 6 years. And Travis started getting into it as well. And we thought, like, hey, wait, why don't we join forces? Like, you're working on these nights and I'm working on these nights. Here, let's just kind of collaborate and just get it all together. And we're like, hey, you know what? Why don't we like put like these up on like, LinkedIn and spread the word, and like the more impact that we have, the greater, And so that's kind of how they both like kicked off. It was very organic. And neither of those like initiatives that we have are really associated to, GoVanguard Security or Gotham Security, in a sense of like, we do this as a project of love, right? We don't run ads. We don't ask for money. We don't have any fees. We don't sell merch or anything like that. Travis and myself legitimately are just kind of interested in helping people avoid the pitfalls and all the bullshit that we had to kind of go through as we got into cybersecurity. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's a great give back. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it. Yeah. So yeah, that's fantastic. So if people, we'll have links in the show notes when we push this out, especially as a podcast, because that's where the long tail reach really comes from. Christian and Travis, we get tens of thousands of listeners later. So we'll have links to this, and I encourage the listeners, go check this stuff out. Like, it's different. I'm telling you,
it's a different look. It's a different feel.
Who does the design? My guess is it's Christian. I'm just guessing. But I haven't met Blake yet. I will now, but I've connected and I've watched the content, but I haven't met Blake in person or in virtual person. But so I don't know how much she's contributed to the style, but my guess is it's Christian. Is it? Are you the designer here, or who's got the creative?
When I did software development, I did a lot of graphics design and web design work when I was younger.
That explains.
And actually, I was one of the one of the large chip manufacturing firms that exists in the world. I helped actually develop their logo, and they're based right out of Malta, New York, called Global Foundries.
Okay.
And I did that one like super.
Let's go down a rabbit hole. So hang out. Let's go down a rabbit hole. So how did one of the largest chip manufacturers, with all their resources and their global connections, go, we need a logo? Somebody get Christian. Like, how did that happen?
I was part of a team. So I was part of a firm in the Saratoga area, and Saratoga in New York is very known for being a very artsy, sophisticated area, and that kind of stuff.
Yes,
and so I was working for a small business at the time, and the reason why Global Foundries chose that business is because they were basically incentivized by New York State, right? To pick all the
to pick somebody local.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I just have to be in the right place at the right time. I'm not talented by any means, but when it comes to our
nor are we.
Yeah, we should get along just fine.
Yeah, nor are we. We were like, I'm a little little peek behind the curtain. I'm a huge true crime fan because of my background, right? And one of my favorite podcasts is Crime Junkies. And so we do cybersecurity. We were thinking of starting a podcast. We had a prior one on brands, brandology and stuff. And then I was like, well, there's got to be, Mark and I were on the phone or on a Zoom or something. I'm like, well, there's got to be Cyber Crime Junkies. And we looked it up and like, nobody has it. So I'm like, I'm registering the trademark, the URL. That afternoon, we got we shifted over our podcast. Like we did it immediately. So a lot of it is just having the right idea right at the right time.
Exactly. For the Enclave stuff, Blake and myself collaborated really closely on the design and the feel. But, when it comes to, making it happen and slapping the website together, certainly I'm a little bit more on that side. As for Cyber-Judo, that has a bit of a different feel and it's very wiki-like. You're kind of to be interactive
it's
and easy to read.
Research-like, and it's really useful. Like it's
Exactly.
they're different feels.
And
but I'll tell you, the content is, and I'm telling you, if you're technical and you want to advance your technical skills, like both of them have phenomenal resources. But when you are just doing what you're doing and you want to learn all of the best practices, the current things, some of the trends, like you guys really, you almost gamify it for people. Like it has the gamification feel. And I tell our company, Mark and I talk about it all the time. If I could create a mobile app or a video game that could just help people have fun and learn about cybersecurity, oh my gosh, I would do that 24/7. I would never sleep. Like
That's a good idea you got there.
Right?
They're both scratching their head like, you know what?
You heard it here first. So I'm just letting everybody know. This thing comes out in a month. We heard it here.
So for Cyber-Dojo, though, Travis and myself collaborated really closely on that. Actually, Travis had an initial background in when he was really, really young and when we first met in mixed martial arts. And so that was kind of like the aspiration behind it, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
so,
very cool.
Yeah.
I'm not judo, but I did teach martial arts for about a decade before I joined the service.
So let's switch gears here and then we'll come back. Okay. So Travis, tell us about yourself and then I want to, and your path into cybersecurity. And then I want to hear how you two met.
Yeah.
So, because I know Travis, you have a military background and that's always inspiring because there's a lot of people that enter cybersecurity from the military, both because of the technical skills, and this is my 2 cents, both because of the technical skills that are gained and the experience, but also because in cybersecurity, there's a bigger calling. Would you guys agree? Like there's a bigger calling. There's a sense of protection of others, right? And that is something that's ingrained in people that join the military. And that's why I love it so much. But they tend to be pretty patriotic people. They tend to be people who are very creative. It's a great mix. It's a great community. So Travis, tell us, the organizations we've been talking to are mostly in the New York City area, right? Manhattan, etc. But you are in the Central Plains area.
North Dakota.
Right, North Dakota, which actually has worse weather than
Chicago.
Yeah. So we're stocky people. We have people with grit in the Midwest here. So tell us about your journey. Tell us about yourself, please.
Yeah. So I definitely come from a much different upbringing into the industry than Christian does. I don't come from a tech background at all. My undergrad was actually in Mandarin Chinese, and I did Army.
Okay.
Yep.
So, were you in the
these
military?
backstories.
I know. I love this. Like somebody's like, I was a guitar player in a band in Tulsa, and then I became a SOC manager. And I'm like,
these backstories are always the best part of the
Yeah. How did you do that?
How did that happen?
Mandarin Chinese. Now, were you already in the military when you were getting your
I
undergrad?
was on an Army ROTC scholarship, so I had the opportunity to do a tactical language at University of Vermont, which they offered 2 of them, Chinese and Russian. I got to choose.
Do that. Okay.
Chose Chinese, spent some time in China, met my wife in Shanghai, graduated. I
Very
commissioned
cool.
as an active duty military intelligence officer. You
Wow.
would think that with Chinese language and working in intelligence, I would have gone over to the Pacific Command. So naturally, I was placed by the government in Eastern Europe with a company full of Russian linguists.
Of course.
Right. Why not?
Because that
makes sense.
that's our government at work.
Spent about half my time in
I love you guys, but some of the decisions I wonder why we're getting our butts kicked. So, all right, okay.
So now you're in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, so you're in Eastern Europe.
I was doing more of a managing oversight position over a unit that does real-world intelligence missions supporting U.S. Army Europe and European Command. So we did things like SIGINT, signals intelligence, electronic intelligence, open source intelligence, human intelligence, all that kind of things. And it was a fusion center. So we're bringing all those things together. And it was really interesting to learn about those different forms of intelligence, but also see how they can aggregate to form a bigger picture. Now, I didn't really have much of a tech-heavy hand in that role, but when I switched to my next role at Fort Irwin, which is a combat training center, one of the largest in the world, that's actually where Army units will go and they will train and practice against a on-station unit. So it's actually the Army's version of a red team to certify that those units were ready to deploy. So when I worked over there, I was actually on the red team, and I was in charge of doing information operations. So misinformation campaigns, a lot like what pen testers would call social engineering at scale, doing tactical deception operations. And I also got a chance to work there on a really interesting cutting edge micro UAV program, which was swarming. So we would have 40 plus UAVs all controlled by basically one 18-year-old kid with an iPad. And that was the first time that I was in like a project managing role of something that was very tech heavy, where I had to really learn about technology. And I loved it. I love the idea that we could go out there in the middle of the Mojave Desert, build our own Wi-Fi, which I didn't even think was a thing you could do.
Right.
Push a 2.4 gigahertz signal out, and then fly all these drones out with a cyber payload and target units downrange. I thought it was so cool. So I started learning more about technology. I got a master's degree in IT management while I was out there.
So that's a blend. So let me pause you there. So given that experience, doing that in the Mojave Desert and seeing that's got to be like, and how old were you at this time? At the time of that?
25, something like that.
Okay. So that's like every young boy's dream. Like you got toys,
that's some really cool stuff.
Military stuff, you got creativity, you're out in the middle of nowhere, like they let you do this. Like that's a great playground, right? Like that, I can see why that like I always look for the triggers, like something in life that happens that inspires somebody, pisses somebody off, does something that makes somebody drive. And like, why are you reading this at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're 44? It's like, well, let me tell you, when I was 22, this happened. And like a lot of it goes back to like some of these things that drive people. And so I'm always trying to find that out. So that's a perfect example. I'll send you my therapist bill later. But I'm just trying to fit. So let's go back to the desert. So you figure that out, then you get your master's degree.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And at that point, we got married. We had a baby on the way. Thought we're planning on getting out of the service, because I've been to like 28 countries in 4 years and moved 9 times, and we're kind of a little bit over that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So we started looking at options. I spun up a LinkedIn, which I had like years ago and never looked at again. Reconnected with Christian, who I actually met years before, which we can get into a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I learned about this really awesome program that the Department of Defense has called the Career Skills Program, or in other services that aren't the Army, it's called Skill Bridge. And what it is it's an opportunity for service members in their last 6 months of their contractual service to do an internship with a civilian company. And it's a great win-win, because the company that's providing the internship doesn't have to pay them. They're still being paid by the government. And then it's there to help ease the transition for.
Yeah, that's a win-win for people, and a lot of people don't realize that. What's it called again? Just so that people that are listening.
In the Army, it's called Career Skills Program, but it exists in all the other branches as Skill Bridge.
Skill Bridge, right?
Yeah,
okay, so that's
pretty great. So I actually got to do that with GoVanguard. And there, obviously, we do a lot of penetration testing and all that. I didn't really have that hard of technical skills. I had a little understanding. I had Security Plus, but
did you get to choose the place where you did it? or was GoVanguard
so-
already approved by the government?
Great question. So there are a whole bunch of organizations and individual companies that do have pre-approval on it, and there's a certain number of slots, and people can pick from a pool of that every year and apply. But service members can also do one-offs if you go through the paperwork process of getting the individual legal approval done and all that things. And thankfully, we identified it, and Christian had approved it on the GoVanguard side early enough that I was able to get a single legal agreement thumbs up from the military to do it with GoVanguard. So it was the first time GoVanguard did it. We've done it several times after me.
Interesting. So let me ask you the elephant in the room. How did you two meet? Because you said you had met before, and was it through LinkedIn or was it through some other avenue? Like, how did you guys first meet?
So Christian grew up in upstate New York, and I was in Vermont, right over the border. So we actually met in high school just through some mutual friends.
Really?
Got through some good friends, and then
I love these backstories.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I went to college in the service, I pretty much dropped off the face of social media, right? So we were out of touch for 8 years ish, something like that, a long time. And then when I got back on LinkedIn and I started talking to people and just reconnecting with some older folks. Christian reached out and was like, "Hey man, you want to hack some banks?" And I was like, "No, I think I want to do something legal." Like, I didn't even know what pen testing was. We kept the conversation going, and it seems to have worked out.
That's fantastic. So when Christian said, "Do you want to hack some banks?" was he thinking like you guys connect? You download the Tor browser, you both connect on Telegram and talk about that?
He was already doing it.
Retained by a bank to actually penetrate so that they can fix their.
Well, these are CEH guys. These are the good guys.
All right. I just didn't know.
Just legit over here. But when we were kids, when we were younger, we got to have all types of fun. We did like things like metalworking in the backyard and all that kind of stuff, and making taser gloves out of disposable cameras.
All of that.
Just
stuff.
Kid stuff.
Typical kid stuff, right?
Cracking open, car batteries and boiling it down to get, really, pulling acid for whatever reasons.
Sure.
That's fantastic. So let me boil it down to let's get some advice for people. So we'll start with let's start with you, Travis. What are your top 3, let's say, tips for people that want to enter into cybersecurity? It's a really general question, and I apologize for that, but I know it's on the back of a lot of people's minds.
The top of the list for me, right off the top of my head, is certainly to leverage LinkedIn and other social media platforms the right way. Being on there and doing the little thumbs up thing on different things, or posting interested on job postings, that's not going to cut it. You have a really awesome opportunity to interact with a community that is very, very, very active, and there's
some really good cybersecurity talent on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And what I love about the community, I don't mean to interrupt, but I talk a lot. Sorry. I've got a podcast. But I do want to just say that this community, the cybersecurity community on LinkedIn, they really are helpful. It's a really positive one.
It's a very supportive group.
When somebody's like, and so often you'll hear somebody chime in, and they don't usually give a lot of content but then they'll chime in. They're like, "I'm on my 7th interview. This sucks." And 5 or 6 people will chime in and say, "Don't give up. Let us help you. DM me. Like, let me walk you through it. Maybe it's a question that you're getting stuck on." Like, it's like total strangers from around the world are like trying to help this person get a job. Like, what a great platform. Like,
that's actually how I started doing mentoring with people and making content and eventually turned into Cyber-Judo. I was new to the industry, but I had done Sec Plus, Net Plus, and Pen Test Plus. So I was just helping people study for Security Plus. Yeah.
So you had gone through the traditional getting certain certifications along the path, right?
I did a little bit. For me, maybe it's the structure of the military background, but having a specific path with an endpoint really helps me hone in on what I'm studying. Now I'm a little bit less about doing the certification test. It's really more about learning the content. So But I still
when you're coming from nothing, like when you're first learning, though, like having those fundamentals and having that background is critical, I would think.
The fundamentals is exactly what I would say for point 2 of getting into it, is you need to learn the lexicon first. So a lot of people, they watch Mr. Robot and then they think they want to be a pen tester. So the first thing they try to do is the OSCP. That's not going to work for you. It's not going to work well.
No.
You'll be much better off getting an understanding of the language of security, how security professionals talk. And a good way to do that is something like the Security Plus. Whether you take the test or not, it'll give you the understanding of what the different attacks are at a high level, understanding what the words mean. Then you can start honing in on the specific area that you want to focus on. And there's great free resources like Professor Messer on YouTube. He's got awesome content, full course.
Yeah, he does.
That's what I use. You don't need to pay a bunch of money. You certainly don't need to pay for a $3,000 boot camp for something like that. That's outrageous. But the content is out there, but people get so fixated on the shiny thing, right, that they forget you need to build the foundation before you can go forward with it. And it gets into the point 3 is once you have that foundation, pick a niche. Information security is massive. And even pen testing is massive. There's a bunch of different kinds of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not saying everybody has to be a pen tester. That's just what I'm particularly aware of. But you can be a great expert in any different one of those areas. And it's okay to have multiple different interests. But a lot of times what I'll see with people that I do work with, that I do mentoring, as they're trying to get into the industry, is they think they need to learn everything, right? They think they need to be the master of the security incident event management system. They need to know how to do web app pen tests. They need to be cloud
too much. They're trying to bite off too much.
It's too much. That's exactly right. So a lot of times when I'm working with people, I'll say, oh, wow, you have a background in web development. That's really awesome. Why don't you focus on web app security? Why are you so interested in doing the Cisco certification? I mean, that's great. I'm glad that you're interested in that. But why don't you strong point this area? Then once you get your foot in the door, then it's a lot easier to spider out into different areas.
Now, that's a great point. When we talk to people throughout the community, it's a lot of leadership and the successful people always got to figure out what that endpoint is that you want and why do you want it. And then even reverse yourself into it from there. But don't just go out and get certs to get certs. I mean, they're good to have, but to Travis's point, it's really, you got to build that fundamental foundation because that's your launching pad. And but you got to have launch. You can't be a master of everything, right? As big as cybersecurity is, it's very specific when you start traveling down that path and take that journey. So yeah, that's a great point, Travis.
That's excellent. So let's shift gears here. Christian, give us your top thoughts and top suggestions on somebody wanting to break into the field. Fantastic
question. I think building off of what Travis was noting in regards to like he's particularly familiar with pen testing, right? One of the things that usually people are attracted to first is the pen testing, and everybody thinks about pen testing, and that's the sexy thing in the room, right? When we talk about cybersecurity and information security. And so I guess my first big pro tip to folks is know that cybersecurity and information security is more than pen testing. And actually, on Cyber-Judo, we did a whole session on this, and we have a page on it about resume writing and career skills tips. And we got this big diagram of like, hey, here are all the different cybersecurity domains, for cyber threat intelligence, right? And, security architecture and governance, risk, and compliance, right? There are so many different elements. Don't just like narrow yourself down to something that's just the pen testing or just this or just that, right? And as you then explore what potential career paths might lie out there, you can kind of line that up to your strengths and your weaknesses. So, for example, somebody who might have better soft skills might be in a better role for, let's say, information security or cybersecurity project management, right? Or sales, right? And so you don't just have to be a pen tester. And one of the things I also say to a lot of people is like, hey, if you're looking to be the super elite hacker motherfucker when it comes to pen testing, realize that you have to live and breathe every day. Are you willing to sacrifice that?
Right.
And are you that passionate? You can get into the introductions and basics and fundamentals of like network pen testing and web pen testing, but after that, when it comes to like APIs, cloud security architecture, and like mobile app pen testing, you're going to have to really love it, right? And so certainly, again, explore all the career opportunities and domains out there. And I think too, what Mark was noting a little bit, identify a goal point. I always like, one of the things when I mentor people, say, okay, where do you want to be in 2 years, right? I want to be this kind, making this amount of money. Okay, is that optimistic or is that realistic, right? And then starting to line things up,
right? Like, what's it based on? Like, where's it gonna come from? Like, as opposed to, and I always have an issue with that. And there's nothing wrong with making money. You know, it's a capitalist society, and honestly, we all need it because it's the fuel.
Yeah.
But you can't make that. My advice to people would always be, and always has been, like, don't make that the end goal. It's a result, right?
Right.
Have your end goal be something you would love, or at least not despise, doing on a regular basis, and get good at that. The money will come, right?
Exactly.
And if you want to make a certain amount, then pick an end goal that pays that amount, right? Like, you want to make, right? You want to make
your target and then run it backwards, right? What are the skills? What is the knowledge? What's necessary for that? This way, what you can do, practically speaking, is narrow down where you need to focus your domains of knowledge. Because one of the biggest problems also in the cybersecurity and information security community is there's too much information. It's information overload. So once you identify your goal point, work that backwards, figure out the specific tracks that you need to focus on, right? That's going to make your life a lot easier, right? And you're going to be a lot more productive. My second big tip is, and this goes along with Travis talking about LinkedIn and getting out there, is find a mentor, interface with your peers, and find a mentee. There are a ton of great mentors out there, and they don't require money. Really good mentors, at the end of the day, they want to just help other people avoid the bullshit that they went through, right? And find hardworking, motivated folks. And it's like, hey, kid, here's a couple good tips for you, right? Here's a couple good tricks. Here's a couple things I learned the hard way. So you can find those folks, as long as they're not asking for money or asking you to do any sus shit. Like, hey, you could go test this thing without authorization. No, like, you have to use a certain level of,
like, when you asked Travis to break into that bank. Which, by the way, we're gonna have to call our friends in the in the acronym
for
business.
15 years. Okay, he can take a show. But anyways, and then when it comes to networking with your peers, being in the trenches with other people, sharing tips and tricks on what's going on, and this way you're always kind of on the bleeding edge of like how other people are doing things, and maybe sometimes you want to avoid how other people are doing things because you don't want to follow the same. You want to differentiate, right? And then lastly, having mentees, right? Even if that starts with your mom or your spouse or your kids talking about even fundamental things, right? Of like being aware of how much information you put on social media, protecting your workstation, your mobile device, that kind of stuff. The reason why having a mentee is important, even when you're entry level to cybersecurity, is because it helps you build your own leadership skills, presentation skills, right?
So
and foundation improves you.
That's really good. And, so for listeners, the people that'll listen to this in a month as a podcast, some of them aren't even in cybersecurity, right? Some of them are business owners. Some of them are working in a bank, in a finance company, insurance, whatever. But this advice, and the advice that we get from people in this community, applies to every industry. That's brilliant, Christian. And I'll tell you why, because you don't know a topic until you have to articulate it, right? And to articulate it, you have to simplify it, right? Because to have a mentee, you have to be able to explain it in English, right? And so by being able to do that, you're simplifying it down, right? Like if you learn 75 different aspects of something, right? You can't tell somebody that is your cousin or your mom or your college buddy or whatever 75 things that you just learned. You need to say, so I learned, and you need to start synthesizing it, right? And then to I think there's great sophistication in simplicity. I think, think about brand slogans. Think about the dairy industry tried to get us to drink milk for decades, telling us it was really good for us, part of a 4-course aspect of our diet, and it might have been a lie, but they still were doing it. But the point is that it kept going down, sales kept going down. Then they came up with Got Milk, and sales rocketed up. Doesn't even talk about the product; it talks about the absence of the product, right? But it's brilliant because it talks about the need. It identifies exactly when you need milk. Like, when does somebody buy that product? It's when they go into the refrigerator, it's not there, right? They need it for their coffee, they need it for whatever. They identified that. And by doing that with these complex ideas as a mentee, like having a mentee, it allows you to synthesize what you're learning into simplistic terms. It's a really good idea. It's a really good.
That's one of the things I tell folks all the time in our Cyber-Judo sessions, that kind of stuff, is at the end of the day, you need to be able to communicate to business leaders in their terms, right? And how it's actually going to impact the organization and how it relates back to the top line and the bottom line for the organization. Throwing jargon at people is not going to be very productive or helpful. If you want to orchestrate real change and improve an organization's cybersecurity posture, that means that what you need to do is take the opportunity to understand who you're communicating with and boil it down, break it into the action items, right? And then provide them a roadmap to success, right? So like our firm, which this is not a sales stick or anything like that, but one of the reasons why we're a small but mighty, boutique firm, and we do pen testing for tons of multi-billion-dollar companies and all kind of stuff, is because they love the simplicity in the pen testing report, where it's not focused on the vulnerabilities and the weakness and just like, oh, go fix that and go fix this. It provides a roadmap, right, to success, and it breaks it down into action items where executive management's like, oh, I get that, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. Right. Like one of the things that we include in a lot of our
aspect, this technical aspect would be bad for our brand because of this. We can go fix it by doing this.
Exactly.
Makes perfect sense.
We'll put like a little diagram in the majority of our reports, which is a SWOT diagram: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So fundamental, so simplistic. Great way to break things down for somebody, telling them how their security posture looks. And then I would say for the third big point is, when people are getting into cybersecurity, a good way that you can help motivate yourself and really soak it up and immerse yourself is start to apply it to your personal life first, right? Which means think about all the information you have out on the internet, that kind of stuff, right? All the people finder sites, right, that you can just search up, right? You could see your address, your name, all your relatives, every email address, every address you lived at, all that kind of stuff. You can find all your phone numbers, right? Go to Have I Been Pwned? You can see all your accounts have been compromised, look at your relatives, all that kind of stuff. So start with stuff like that and cleaning up your own cybersecurity posture there. Now start to apply that to, what about your home network? Are you using the insecure, modem
sitting over behind the TV?
Yeah. It's provided by the ISP. Oh, okay. Right. Well, here, how about you build your own firewall and configure it, right? And I'll tell you what, what's really, really motivating is when you're trying to set up a new firewall and you're trying to get the internet working again, and you're really motivated because you're not getting a dopamine hit of the YouTube videos, right? And your social media, like, fuck, I want to fix the internet really quickly.
Right.
So it engages you in that process. And, so many other aspects of securing your mobile devices and workstations, like people should apply that to their personal lives first and to their relatives and to their families. That's going to help immerse you, get you started, make you feel confident, and then you can build from there, right, into setting up a fantastic pen testing lab and all that kind of stuff.
That's a really great point, Christian. That's a really good point. I like that.
That's fantastic.
And we've done sessions in the past on setting up your home network or poking at out-of-the-box routers and all that. It's on Cyber-Judo for free. We got videos, we've got guides on exactly things to consider, different ways to go about it.
That's great. We'll have links to that in the show notes. I've been poking around your sites for a while. Like, I love that stuff. I learned something. I go down a rabbit hole. You'll have something on there, and then like 5 hours later, I'll look up and I'll be like, crap, I got to get shit done. Like, I've got these two guys set me down a rabbit hole. Like, I got to get back on task.
David, we had one of the viewers, Joshua, had a question. You may want to pull that up and see what Travis and Christian say.
So Joshua Shutton Dodd asked, any recommendations for cyber forensics as somebody wanting to go into uni apprenticeship in the UK?
Ooh, that's a really fantastic.
That is a really good question. This is why we do it live, man. Like, I love that question was not coming out of Morrow or Mosher, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no.
So Travis has the more conventional, again, certifications path, that kind of stuff. As I was elaborating to just a little bit earlier, is I came from a background of when I was really young, getting into computers and software development and just kind of tearing apart shit, right? And so my recommendations are really going to come from a more focused on the skills, focused on learning it, right? Type of background, not necessarily certification. So I do not have any certifications and in mind, particularly around cyber forensics. So my apologies to that. But in regards to things to play with and things to leverage and whatnot, what I would highly recommend is this. So I would probably start out with either grabbing an old computer, old device, right? Or making a device, right? And setting it up, right? Pull the hard drive out, right? And then what you can do is get a write blocker off of Amazon or that kind of stuff, right? And so you could start to forensically image, right, without manipulating the original data on the hard drive, right? Image it, and then now take that image and hey, can you get that mounted up into a virtual machine, right, to start analyzing it in real time and performing dynamic analysis on it? Or get familiar with tools like Autopsy is probably one of my favorite tools. It's open source and it's free. It's very thorough and effective. And you can mount your forensic image to that and start sorting through it and getting a good feel for what type of insights you can get from that. I would also say getting familiar with some of my favorite tools, being like Loki is a really great one, especially because it has like YARA rules that are built in for looking at the file system for any types of interesting indicators of compromise and any type of hashes that might be associated with malicious actor events. But those would be some of the just kind of initial pro tips there. And my background.
Okay, hang on. Let me back you up because you just had a couple good recommendations.
Yeah.
State the names of those devices, how people can find them, and then and then you also mentioned something about YARI, and I want to ask you, what does that mean for listeners later on? Because some of these people have done this before, some of them have no idea, some of them are just interested in it. So he's scrounging around down below. I think he's looking for the cash from that bank.
I got my forensic kit right here, so I'll provide a specific name of the write blocker device that I use.
So for listeners, he's like pulling out like a bag of tricks.
Oh yeah,
like a friggin' magician. He's got like, wait, there's a rabbit back there, I think. No.
Yeah, right. So I got a CRU WeebTech Forensic UltraDoc. This is really fantastic. It's a really
what does that do? What does that do? It looks like an old floppy disk.
It allows you to mount up various types of media like hard drives and all that kind of stuff for forensic analysis. And it's what's called a write blocker that prevents essentially you as a forensic analyst from
overwriting the actual data.
Yeah, okay. So you don't affect, quote unquote, the crime scene, right?
Right.
So pick up one of these. I would say to start with a great open source tool. It's called Autopsy. So I would start with leveraging that, and then I would also get familiar with some other open source scripts and tools. A big one's called Loki, and that has the YARA rules built into it, and it does a lot of other cool things.
And what are YARA rules? Explain to us what those are.
Yeah, so YARA rules are essentially a rule set for identifying various hashes and indicators of compromise on a file system that a malicious actor might leave behind as they have they gain access to a particular workstation or a server, that kind of stuff.
Breadcrumbs, smoking guns. Yeah, breadcrumbs, smoking guns. It's fingerprints left at the scene, basically.
Exactly. So the YARA rules will help you find those types of things.
That's what we do. We simplify things because my litmus test is the glazed look that Mark gets. And as soon as I see that, I'm like, let's explain it to him.
Yeah. If it's not digestible data, then it's not going down.
Yeah.
So okay.
And I could be a little bit like Carrot Top sometimes when I pull out like my tools. I'm like, oh, I got a tool for that. Let me get this.
I love it.
I love that analogy. That's really good.
That's phenomenal.
The next step,
creates a great visual of the podcast.
Travis,
Joshua, there is once you got those tools, you're starting to play with it, you're starting to learn and get those hands-on experiences. That's really good. You also need to let people who you're applying to know that you know things too. So a good way to go about that is to start doing some write-ups, do some guides, post it on his GitHub of just the different labs that he was doing, the different he was playing with. Do a little walkthroughs. They don't have to be complicated. Just get that up there. One, it will show that he's using something that everybody uses like GitHub. It's demonstrating a little bit of his writing capability and that he's really interested in poking with these things in his free time. Then take all that material and start sharing it out on LinkedIn because other people are going to be looking for those same kind of
exactly.
That's a really good point.
Holding that brand, and it's going to be a lot easier to get that first interview when they can Google
They
you,
see what
just
you've done.
see all the cyber forensic stuff that you've been doing.
So
Yeah.
from the business perspective and the career perspective, two things I want to point out. What you guys were just saying was brilliant, okay? And the two most significant things that I always try and help people with when they're entering into, I don't care if it's cybersecurity, you want to get into GRC, whatever it is, right? However you want to break into the field, whatever it is developing that self-brand, right? And LinkedIn is the phenomenal platform to do it in. And while you will certainly create a GitHub and post your technical findings there, that's the technical aspect. Technical people will go to GitHub, right? But people that would hire you won't necessarily, right? And so how do you bridge that gap? And one of the best suggestions I would always have is not only just to post that as original content, like, hey, everybody, have you ever wondered about this? Well, I did an experiment and here's a link to my findings on GitHub. But LinkedIn has a phenomenal newsletter opportunity, right?
Yeah.
You can create your own newsletter, get subscribers. It's built into LinkedIn. And you can copy and paste what you've done in GitHub and just address I always think of things like IRAC, right? Like, what's the issue? What's the rule? How do you apply it? And then what's the conclusion, right? Or some model like that for just communicating a business case. If you do that and you demonstrate that on LinkedIn, you're going to have business owners. You're going to have people that are the decision makers see the technical aspect, right? And if they even understand it, that's great. But B, they're going to see you doing this. You identified an issue, you applied the rules, you applied the technology, you solved it, and you came up with some conclusions. Like, that is such a great step for self-branding. The other thing both of you talked about, was the communication aspect. And I can't tell people enough, no matter what field you are in, is being able to build an internal business case, right? Being able to identify, here's an issue where, like, if you want to get a job, or if you want, let's say you get the job, right? What's the biggest struggle for internal resources, no matter what field, no matter what niche you're in? And that is to get funding to accomplish something, right? From a very simplistic level. We all feel it. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I tell people all the
Yeah.
time is, like, we'll have a pen testing report, and a lot of times I'm like, hey, this is something that you can then take to your customers who are asking about your cybersecurity posture, right?
Yes.
And that's going to help institute good trust with your customers, help reduce contracting friction, right? Which means that it's going to increase your revenue stream, right? And at the end of the day, then they see the pen testing report not just as a piece of technical insight, but also as a marketing deliverable and instrument.
Right. Why is that?
That's a good
Because at
point.
the end of the day, nobody wants to do business with people that are going to lose their stuff, right? Like, come on. Like, we don't want to do business with, like, everything everybody does is essentially commoditized, right? You like a jacket, you can buy a jacket anywhere. I'd like to buy a jacket from a place that's not going to ruin my FICO score today. Can I do that? Like, you know what I mean? Can I buy a jacket from a place that's not going to, compromise and file a false tax return for my kid? We do that? Right? That's what security boils down to. And so, by being able to work with organizations, just like you said, Christian, that have demonstrated, right, that they care about their customers' data, right? It means they care about their customers, because they avoid the perils of technology. So that's really good. And building an internal business case is so important, right? Identifying the issue, right? Identifying what your ask is, right? Talking about the alternatives, like, state everything. Like, when people make an internal business case, it's so important to be like, one alternative is to do nothing. You don't have to fund this. You don't have to do this. But if you do that, here's the existing risk, which is why I'm bringing it up in the first place, right? That you have. Here's what could happen. Here's where we're going to always stay if we're stuck with the status quo. Alternative 2 is, take this path. Alternative 3 is maybe take a path with another vendor or something else, but you're going to have this risk, right? And it lets you build your case, and then you kind of conclude. I think just by doing that, it'll help you break in, and it'll really help you in interviews too.
Oh yeah.
So in some of your advice on resume writing and things like that, you guys have resources on that. Is that you guys can provide us those links, and we can put those in the show.
Yeah, we definitely want to put those in the show notes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna like hit you with a denial of service attack of resources. Okay.
Really
be a bumper
I love
overflow on LinkedIn. Nothing.
Well, hey man, I'm protected by my Comcast router thing.
Yeah.
So I am locked solid. So
well, this was really good stuff, guys. This I found this very useful, and it's great to see such leadership for the community. You know, as big as IT feels is a global, you know, domain. When you get on LinkedIn and start sharing some of these resources and start joining some of these groups, I encourage everybody listening and watching to follow Christian and Travis. It's a lot of good information out there that is, as David said, there's a lot of people willing to jump in and help and share and guide in a moment's notice. So this was really good, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming in for this.
No, absolutely fantastic. And Travis and Christian, this will not be our last conversation.
No, not at all. I got about a dozen more.
We're going to reach out after this, and we'll have other collaborations.
Attaboy, and Ryan Johnson. Look at that. He dropped the URL right in for everybody.
He dropped the URL right in the chat.
Now, by the way,
solid dude right there.
Just as like a side tip for people breaking into cybersecurity, and speaking of Ryan Johnson, because I think he's a really good like illustrative example of like the perfect type of mentee, right? And the perfect type of mentee are, like you guys were saying, folks who like engage and interface on social media, right? And not just posts and comments, that kind of stuff, but some of the coolest things that I've gotten out of folks like Ryan is they'll just shoot me a message on our side like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Hey, like what wireless adapters do you use for your Wi-Fi?
I love that because it shows that while you go offline and you're busy at work and stuff, they're thinking about it. They're thinking about it. They've got a question for you, and they trust you enough to reach out to you. And that's what it's all about.
And I would highly encourage that anyone who connects with, you know, Travis and myself, hey, you guys can certainly send us questions off the side, all that kind of stuff. And what I would recommend is, hey, when you get a huge spiel from me of like all my little tidbits and details and how enthusiastic I am about cybersecurity and providing insight, take that and then go share that with other folks too. Hey, you know, I was speaking with blah, 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 blah. Here's a couple tips and tricks I happen to learn as I do it, right? Or here's a couple additional things I wanted to add to it, and, you know, in some, you know, more context, you know? So that's a really great way as a mentee to build great relationships, network, and likely build your career path a lot faster, and, you know, build that velocity to be, much, increase the momentum of your velocity, you know?
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Christian, Scott, Travis DeForge, thank you so much for
this was great stuff
today. We will be talking again, I promise you. So this is really, really, really fun. You guys have classes every Wednesday as well, and we will have links in the show notes for people to connect with you guys. Everybody, get on LinkedIn. I'm just telling you, we are not sponsored by LinkedIn, but man, LinkedIn, if you're listening, community. If you're listening, like, we owe you so much. Like, it is a great platform to learn, to share, to meet great people. Just keep on keeping on, guys. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Any parting words that you gentlemen would like to share?
First off, thank you guys so much for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we're looking forward to coming back hopefully in the near future. And when it comes to Cyber-Judo, Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We always love having people join us. It's a Zoom meeting. It's an open format, right? You can unmute yourself and speak and ask questions in real time and pick our brains, all that kind of stuff. So We're always happy to have more folks join us in that process. And certainly don't hesitate to check out some of the resources we put on YouTube, some of the resources we have on Enclave-Regenerous as well. And hopefully it helps you guys out. If you guys ever have any tips, tricks, contributions you guys want to add, we're big open source contributors, and we'll have folks contribute and make sure that they have attribution provided to them. Those are other really great ways, right, to demonstrate to potential employers what you're doing and what you've been learning is contribute to the community.
Yeah, it makes that resume come to life, right? That is fantastic. Hey, you guys keep on keeping on. We are going to talk probably a lot more than you even think that we're going to talk. So, all right. So everybody check these guys out, connect with them on LinkedIn, check out their information, their YouTube channel, their websites, their work. Thank you guys so much for not just joining us today, but everything that you do for the security.
Yeah. Thank you for what you contribute to the community.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. Bye now.
Okay.
Hi, Cyber Crime Junkies. Thanks for listening.
Got a question you want us to address on an episode? Reach out to us at cybercrimejunkies.com. We explore why cybercrime grows daily, how it is funded, productized, and organized, how to protect yourself, and where cybercrime goes to hide. And thanks for being a cybercrime junkie.